We have, I'll call the roll. Tracer, you want to do it?
No, you can do it.
All right, we have our Joe Casella.
Here.
We have Frank Lohman. We have two new members that I'd like to officially welcome now, Lauren Mealy and Greg Wolf. Welcome, and we look forward to working with you.
Thank you.
We have a special guest tonight in our Chief of the Fire Department, Jack Kasner. Chief, thank you very much for joining us. And with that, having said, I believe we have a quorum. We're 4 out of 5. So if we'd like to start with the Pledge of Allegiance, as we always do, I have taken the liberty of putting an American flag up there. And I actually said the Pledge of Allegiance to myself, and I said to myself, how much more important could it be than today to say the Pledge of Allegiance? Anyway, I'd like to do the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag.
To the flag, United States of America. To the republic for which stands
one nation,
under God, indivisible, liberty, and justice for all.
Thank you.
Jim, are you there?
Yeah, I just got here.
Hi, Jim.
Hey, how's it going?
I'm good.
Jim.
Let's see. So obviously, Greg Wolf. You know Joe Casella. You know me. You know Donnie Miller. You know Jack Kasner, I believe. And meet Lauren Miller. She is our new representative from the Republican side. So we have two people. Jim is our, town council liaison. So welcome, Jim.
Right, thank you. Yeah, I was just coming from another meeting, so sorry to be late.
Say again?
I said I was just coming from another meeting. Sorry to be late.
Okay, not a problem. You're not late by more than 2 minutes. Not a problem. Okay, everyone should have received from Lieutenant Miller a copy of our December 9th minutes. I would like to entertain a motion at this point in time to waive the reading of those minutes. Somebody want to make a motion?
I moved.
Joe, okay. A second? New guys, don't be afraid to second motions or make them. So I'll second the motion to waive the reading. All in favor of waiving the reading? Aye.
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 So moving forward, I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes as presented by Tracy for our December 9th, 2020 meeting.
So moved.
Moved. I'll second it just to get it on the floor. Any omissions, corrections, changes at all? Hearing none. All in favor of approving the 12-9 minutes? Aye.
Aye.
So thanks, Trace. Very nice job. Donna, we got any correspondence and communications, public communications?
Other than the two letters of resignation that came from the town clerk's office, no, I have none.
Okay, thank you. I am going to, with the indulgence of the commissioners, I'm going to move Chief Kasner up on the agenda so that he doesn't have to spend the rest of the night listening to us, unless he'd like to. You're more than welcome to. But Chief, we've noticed in your reports every month, going back to the middle of summer, that a major portion of the responses that the fire department makes are for false alarms. And I know that there's a cost associated with that, but there's also, in my way of thinking, a danger of having something happen on the way to or from a false alarm, let alone a real alarm. So I've asked you, and he graciously agreed to join us tonight to talk about that. I know there's ordinances, there's all sorts of stuff, but Jack, I'm going to turn the floor over to you because you and I have already talked about this, and I'd like you to fill in the other commissioners about what's going on in those false alarms.
Sure. I'm going to try to share my screen. I had a graph I wanted to share that I think paints a pretty good. Oh, Don, can you enable screen sharing, or whoever the host is?
Oh boy.
If you hit the screen sharing button, it should say enable or allow others to share. If we can, it's no big deal. I know I didn't give you a notice, so.
I think Don needed the more advanced training for that.
Yeah, right? We're lucky we're all on right now.
Oh, he's gone.
Sorry.
It's okay. Not to sweat it. I'll go through the numbers. I was going to share a graph, but it's not that big of a deal. Yeah, you are correct in your observations that a good percentage of our responses are to alarms, period, and then the false alarms. Last year, I ran some reports today, so I had some fresh data. Last year, we responded to about 943 incidents, and of those 943, I'll give you the exact number. The biggest number of things we responded to is false alarms. Of the 943, 437 or 46% of those are false alarms. Of that number, 72 of them are to East Mitchell Avenue, to Hillside Village alone. But the numbers that you see doesn't really trend outside of the norm for the industry. That's pretty much, what other fire departments respond to. There are ordinances in place that if you get two and then the third one you get charged 100, I think it's 150. I think I brought the ordinance home too. It's $150 that you get sent a bill. But that has to be for an alarm malfunction. So Hillside Village, for example, somebody burns toast, the alarm system sees smoke, or anybody in Cheshire who has an alarm, who actually has a smoke condition or a fault, a CO condition, those are not considered actual malfunctions. That's the alarm system doing what it's supposed to do. So it doesn't fit the ordinance. The number of billable fire alarms that we respond to is relatively small, because the majority of them are within that false alarm category. I probably should kind of give you a little bit of background of what's in that category. That category includes CO detector malfunctions, transmission, phone line issues with it, sprinkler activations, any other alarm, and then again, carbon monoxide activations. 276 of the 437 of those alarms were alarm system activations with no fire, which means somebody burned toast, somebody was sanding, creating dust, somebody was doing something to make that alarm system think that there was a condition that needed to notify the alarm company. We'll tell you that, that is a lot of the calls that we go to, obviously, but every house that's being built in Cheshire has, I will say 9 out of 10 of the houses, the new construction, have a complete alarm system and have an intrusion alarm, a burglar alarm, and the fire alarm system. So we're adding, I don't want to call it a problem, but we're adding to this call volume just by mere way of construction. Some of the buildings that we're building in town, the commercial buildings, are all equipped with sprinkler systems, which cause alarms, with fire alarm systems, which cause alarms. There is a cost associated with it. I don't have that in front of me, but I know exactly what it costs on an average to put a fire engine on the street. It also includes wear and tear on the vehicles and fuel and the pay per call that we provide our membership. So there's certainly, Frank, you're 100% on the money when you say there's a cost associated with it. There certainly is a cost associated with it. So I guess the next question would be, how do we reduce that number? There's not an easy answer on how to reduce it, because we have a fine system in place, which most of those don't, like I said, don't qualify for being fined. You get a combination of burglar and fire alarms. Most residents don't get 3. And in the case where we went to Hillside Village 72 times, those wouldn't qualify because those are actual smoke conditions. So there's a few frequent flyers that we've tried to work with them. You can replace some type of detection with, say, replace a smoke detector with a heat detector. You can do things like that. But there's a cost associated with doing that with an alarm system, pay an alarm company, an installer. And there's a concern about the life safety. If you replace, say, a smoke detector with a 135-degree heat detector, by the time it gets to 135 degrees at the ceiling in the kitchen area, if the fire originates in the bedroom, what's the temperature going to be in the bedroom? So there's a benefit to having the systems that they do have, but they are prone to, activations. Like I don't even want to say false, because they're actual activations. So I'm all ears. We've got one of the more stiff penalties. I think 150 is probably more than most cities and towns do, but we put that in place so that if it's John Q. Public's alarm system and it continues to malfunction and he or she decides to not spend the money to get it fixed, that's where we can step in and say, okay, it's costing you $150 every time we come out here. You know, that stings a little bit after the, you know, at least it would for me if I had to write a check to the town of Cheshire for $150 or $300 or something like that. We do respond to a fair amount of alarms within our town buildings. Obviously, those we can't find anything for anybody at the town for responding to a town building, but they're a big part of our call volume. But they're I think, you know, and I'm not sure if this is the right way to categorize them, but they're a necessary evil, because we have gone to fire alarms that ended up being buildings on fire on, you know, at least a few occasions in over my tenure here. So
What kind of town buildings, Jack?
every one of our town buildings, well, I'll give you an example. Every time we get a power glitch at the pool, it sends out a trouble fire alarm. And usually when we get that one, we get the pool, the Yellow House, and the youth center, they send out a trouble signal. So somebody's got to go out and investigate that. And the reason that we go out and investigate it is 3 or 4 years ago, we had a trouble signal come in. Nobody went and investigated it. It was the town hall sprinkler activation, and it ran for probably 14 or 16 hours and did hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of damage to the town hall. So at that point, we made a decision internally in town and said, somebody's got to put eyes in these buildings when we get an alarm. So that ended up being us. So we do that. And, you know, we're looking to actually try to get out of that business and have maybe a building representative or a public works representative go out and look at it, because generally when that happens, it's in the middle of a storm and we're running like crazy. You know, we're going to wires down, trees down, alarm activations, and then you throw the town, you know, 5 or 6 town buildings in on it. Just adds to our call volume, and it's probably, that's one that we could reduce, but that's a very small number in comparison to, you know, the 1,000 calls that we go to, give or take, a year.
When you and I spoke, you and I talked about in the old days, quote unquote, you used to send 3 vehicles out to these quote alarms,
Right.
and now you're sending 2.
We're sending, and 9 out of 10 times we send an engine and a ladder. I will say to Hillside Village, because of its proximity to the firehouse, we send 1. And for Beachport, we go to Beachport probably 30 times a year. We have a standard operating procedure that we only send a single engine to Beachport because it's so close.
Yeah.
You know, we're comfortable sending 1 engine there. If they have anything, we can be there in less than a minute and a half or 2 minutes anyway. So we've done what we can to mitigate the exposure, because you know, one of the other points you made is valid. Every time you send a fire engine or an ambulance or a police car down the street with lights and sirens, you're putting the person or the people in that vehicle at risk, as well as the rest of the motoring public. That's my concern. You know, there's a lot of injuries and deaths to firefighters and police officers every year responding to and returning from calls, and that's something that, you know, I hope I never have to deal with. So we tried to minimize our exposure as much as we can, but like I said, some of these are just a necessary evil.
Any questions for the chief? Comments? Suggestions?
Yeah, I kind of assumed that when my alarm, or when my, you know, residential alarm malfunctioned and sent an alarm out, I kind of assumed that the police department showed up rather than the fire department. Is that not the case?
For a burglar alarm or any type of alarm other than fire or carbon monoxide, you are correct. And actually, generally, when we do have a fire alarm, and Don can correct me if I'm wrong, but they send at least 1 police officer to every fire situation, whether it's a carbon monoxide alarm or a fire alarm or whatever it is. There's always a police officer responding, at least
Correct.
1 as well.
Yep.
So we have 1 or 2 fire apparatus going and a police officer going.
Correct. At a minimum,
Okay.
you know, if we get a call that we know it's a fire, say we had a fire on West Main Street a couple of weeks ago, we needed probably 4 police officers just to help with traffic, you know. So different scenario, but depending on what it is that we're responding to, we adjust our response accordingly.
And you said early on, is it 3 times and then you get fined, or you get fined on the 3rd time, or what
I
is
don't
it?
have the ordinance in front of me. I thought I brought it home because I know I printed it out. It's probably sitting in the printer at the firehouse, but I believe it's 2. You get 2 for free. The 3rd one you get hit.
That's
Okay.
the police department.
Yeah, Tracy or Don may know better.
Say that again. I'm sorry.
You or Tracy may know better what the ordinance is. I think it should get 2 free fire or burglar alarms combined, and I think the 3rd one is when the fee kicks in. But
Right.
it could be 3 in the 4th one. Is that right, Trace?
I can look into my file folder over here because I used to have a real problem with my alarm system.
I'd imagine that a lot of people don't know about that ordinance, right?
No, because it doesn't get, we very, I will tell you this, 15 or 20 years ago, we've had people or businesses that would have alarm after alarm after alarm, and we would go there literally 6 or 7 times over the course of a weekend. And that was when, this was put in long ago, but when you hit them with 150, when the police department sends them a bill for $150 or at least, it gets, that's really made to get the person who's refusing to fix their alarm system. It's kind of a motivation to get them to repair their alarm system. It's not meant to chastise the person who burns the toast, or if if whatever the case is, and you actually create a smoke condition. That's not I don't believe what the ordinance is intended to do.
When you have your first, and this again from experience going back years, but when you have your first, you get a letter from the chief, at least the fire or burglar alarm or a false police alarm. You get a letter from the chief warning you that one more after the town ordinance, blah blah blah, you're going to get fined. I in those days it was 125 and maybe 150 now, but yeah, they give you plenty of warning.
So you are.
I'm sorry.
How many people a year get to that point where they're fined?
I don't know the number off the top of my head. That's the fine is done through the police department, but I would guess it's probably less than 10.
10 people?
10, less than 10 people. Yeah, it's very infrequent that we get frequent flyers that have a malfunctioning alarm and don't get it fixed. It was a lot worse in the 80s for whatever reason, 80s and 90s. But recently, in the past 15 years, if people have an alarm system and something goes wrong, they jump right on it and they get it fixed.
It's almost deja vu. Just before Christmas, one of my CO detectors started beeping. So I called the alarm company. They came out and they disconnected it and said that they'd have to order a new CO2 detector. The guy left, and 3 minutes after he left, the second one went down. And before they ordered the parts, 3 out of 4 went down. I just got a bill for $1,200 replacing all of them.
Yeah, they last about 5 years. They tell us that's
exactly
the life
you said,
expectancy.
5-year end of life.
Right.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Well,
Chief? I'm sorry, Joe.
Yeah, I appreciate the explanation of what, like I know like a lot of these fire system activations, no fire, unintentional, showed up like on our list on, each monthly report. And I think that clarification, like, hey, that's the smoke detector doing its job.
Right. Do you guys just get the graph, or do you actually get like the sheets of data that tell you exactly what category it is?
We get both.
Okay.
Yeah.
If there's anything more that you want from a data perspective, we have two good systems that we use for data collection. I'll provide whatever it is you want, and I was actually happy to attend because I didn't think anybody actually read my monthly report. So thanks, Frank, for.
Oh, that's exactly why you're here.
I think Frank's the first one to ever read it. I appreciate it.
I'm usually hoping no one's reading the monthly report.
Yeah.
Chief, if there's anything we can do to try and help you and the fire department resolve problems or whatever, just please let us know.
Absolutely.
We're here to be of service to you and the police department and to the town and to the general public. So, still to me, the most alarming thing is the motor vehicle thefts. It just floors me that people leave their keys in the car, let alone the car running. But anyway. Thanks, Jack, very, very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. Congrats to all the new members, and thank all of you for the time that you guys put in. I know what it's like to volunteer a lot of time after hours, so I certainly can appreciate what you guys do, and we appreciate it.
Our pleasure.
Thank you, Jack.
All right.
Thanks,
take care.
Jack.
Yep.
Thank
Have
you.
a good night.
You too. Thanks.
Unfinished business, ladies and gentlemen. We have a sightline survey, and with that, I'd like to move to our council liaison, Jim Jenks, who I guess you've chatted with Public Works about the Jarvis Street crossing of the linear trail and the sightline problem that Joe Casella brought out got almost 2 months ago. Jim, the floor.
Yeah, so George told me that they were going to go take a look at what they could cut back. He also told me that I believe a lot of the greenery that's there is actually in the state right away, so they can't touch that. I went out there and took a look myself. I mean, I've been out there a lot, but I don't see that there's much close to the road. I think there used to be more there close to the road. I mean, a bigger problem for people being able to see people on the trail entering the road is that there's the residential property there has a big fence that runs along there as well, which comes up pretty close to the edge of the road, which is not anything we can do about. But another way of approaching this problem is probably, I don't know if you guys have talked about this before, is suggesting we have actual stop signs on the roadway at the trail crossings. Especially maybe at this one at Jarvis is a good example of where we should have one, because the distance between where the kind of shrubbery stops when you're coming up from the trail to Jarvis is pretty short there. So it does create a sightline issue.
Interestingly enough, thanks, Jim. Interestingly enough, I got a phone call this morning from Sean Kimball.
Yeah.
He received a phone call from a councilman from Southington. And Southington, as you know, or may not know, but Southington is extending the linear trail through Southington and eventually plans to complete it out through Plainville.
Right.
Well, this councilman and the town council of Southington have formed what they call the Trail Safety Working Group. And they're asking Cheshire through the Public Safety Commission to join with them, if we're interested, in working to try and make the linear trail safer. Perhaps even applying for state grants as a group of Plainville, Cheshire, and Southington, and perhaps lighting the trail, things like stop signs, speed bumps, and whatever. And I'd like to hear from the commissioners whether this is of interest to join forces with Southington in this trail safety working group.
I think it's a great idea.
Lauren? Lauren's muted. Did she mute herself?
I'm here. No, I'm here. Sorry about that. I had just asked a question in the chat about the Jarvis Street because I know that we have the yield to pedestrian signs near me on Brooksvale. Like I know the site, you guys were talking about the sight line, but I was just wondering if there's a pedestrian sign in the middle there that would help motorists know.
I believe the sign was taken down for weather.
Right. I just wasn't sure if there was one up there because I'm not up there, but a bunch.
There is normally,
Okay.
or in the summertime, there is one.
And as far as the partnership with Southington or Plainville or wherever, that's
Southington.
obviously.
Jim, I assume that you're probably in favor of it.
Yeah, for sure. I think it makes a lot of sense. Might as well.
Joe?
I'm with it. Yeah.
Okay. I will then contact this councilman whose name is whatever, and find out what this is about. And perhaps at our February meeting, I can bring you up to date and give you a better idea as to whether Cheshire really wants to participate with Plainville and Southington. But they're talking about lighting the thing.
Yeah, I saw that about something to talk about lighting. It had to do with some issues with graffiti and safety and stuff. But that would be interesting. I don't know what they mean by lighting the trail, but that could be cool.
Well, they actually said to Sean that they're concerned that the youngsters, as I will call them, because they're mostly youngsters who are stealing and breaking into cars, are approaching Southington through the trail. I don't know how true that is, but they're concerned about it. They figure if they can light it or do something with the safety of the trail, that they can stop some of the cars. Their car thefts make ours look minimal. Thank God. But their car thefts are off the chart. Okay, that takes care of that. Safety sign update, Donnie.
They were changed out. I believe it was late last week, and sticking with mostly winter type stuff. I think there's a couple of chimney type things, probably icy roads, but they were all changed out. I think last Friday, if not early this week.
The one I love is that Santa loves a clean chimney, so do we.
Yeah.
Okay, sidewalk update. Before we get into that, I'm going to turn it over to Jim again, because I think you're the one that's bringing up the subject about a process for analyzing the need for sidewalks.
Right.
I'm just curious, Don, what is the ordinance regarding shoveling? I noticed that Rite Aid didn't shovel for 2 days after our little storm that we had, what, 2 weeks ago? And that my wife, who walks the dog down Route 10, twice a day, that Ricky's property, which shocked me, was not shoveled. And it was just 2 or 3 days before these places got shoveled. So is there an ordinance in town for?
I believe it's 24 hours. I'd have to check that. And typically we kind of go out and give a knock on the door and try to prompt them to. I think if they don't do it after a certain amount of time, Public Works does it, and they will get charged for a fine for them doing it, basically.
Would you do me a favor and check that ordinance out, and let's talk about it in February?
Sure.
Because it does make a difference in terms of being able to walk the sidewalks. Go ahead, Jim, your idea as to a process for analyzing the need for sidewalks in certain areas of town.
Yeah, so thanks. So I think there's a nice opportunity here for our commission to be sort of the clearinghouse for, number one, when people make requests for sidewalks to the town manager's office can refer that to us, and we can have a process that we develop for figuring out whether or not there should be a sidewalk there, or whether or not we kind of advise the council that there should be a sidewalk there. I did some research on how other towns do it. There isn't really much out there as far as ordinances, and I mean, generally speaking, towns do have various ordinances as far as or various land use regulations through planning and zoning as far as their sidewalk construction goes. We in Cheshire have, generally we ask a developer who's developing a new subdivision, we'll ask for sidewalks on both sides of the street. Sometimes planning and zoning will waive one side, so you end up with just sidewalks on one side, which is fine for most streets. So we have right now, just in case somebody's curious, we have 157 miles of roads in town, and we have 107 miles of sidewalks in town. But in some cases, in some roads, we have 2 sidewalks on a street, so some of that mileage of sidewalk is a little bit, we have some overserved streets, and then we have a lot of through streets in particular that are not served by sidewalks at all, and that's where we have a lot of gaps and kind of problems as far as people wanting to ride, and just the speed of some of those streets and making it less safe to walk and run. So we can have, I think we can, I talked to the town manager, I talked to George Nowotny, who's our public works director. They're both kind of on board with us, kind of developing, I guess a rubric or a filter or whatever you want to call it for how we decide where we should have sidewalks. We don't currently as a town have kind of a target list of streets where we want to have new sidewalks. We have, over time, it's going to become very expensive to maintain and to update old sidewalks. We have, a town manager told me in the next 10 to 15 years, if we want to begin to really renew all the current sidewalks we have, you're talking about, $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 a year in just renewing the old sidewalks. So it is expensive to maintain once they're put in. So that's something we do have to keep in mind. Right now, planning public works does try to do about $200,000 a year worth of renewing of old sidewalks around town. Sometimes they do that, sometimes they don't, but there is current upkeep happening. So there.
Jim,
what's that?
How big a budget for old sidewalks or new sidewalks rather?
Right now, we don't have a budget, a line item for new sidewalks. Not at all. Now, there's the last couple of years, the projects that have happened in part due to state grants. For example, the recent project on Jarvis that goes up the hill on Jarvis and comes down to the trail. Big sidewalk project was a state grant. There's going to be a project on Contour Drive and Highland Ave that's again mostly funded from a state grant. So that's where the new construction has come from. So we want to, as far as targeting the neighborhoods or the streets where we could have sidewalks, I've got several ideas for the streets that probably make the most sense as far as them being through streets, streets that enable people to walk to a park or to schools. areas where there are kind of gaps in sidewalks where you have, sidewalks going up the street a certain distance and then stopping, but there's a relatively short distance to a new set of sidewalks, so there's some gaps like that. We can also think about less expensive options, I think, sort of sidewalk equivalents in some neighborhoods where instead of actually suggesting we construct a sidewalk, more like a on-street lane that could be separated with bollards or something. So it's more like a walking / biking lane or something. And there's some areas where we could try that kind of thing. But it's kind of up to us if this is something we want to undertake. I think it would be, again, it would just be sort of advisory to the council, advisory to the town manager's office, but it would give us, start to give us kind of a plan for how to kind of fill in some of the areas that we are lacking right now in terms of sidewalks and connectivity of the neighborhoods to parks and schools and such.
Commissioners, what do we think?
Jim, what are a couple of streets in town that you're worried about the most?
One is Weiss Road. There's going to be a new development. It's going to be a new development going in called Orchard View, which is when you turn onto Weiss Road from Route 68. It's kind of, it's maybe 100 yards, 200 yards down on the left. And there will not be any, it's going to be a 21 lot subdivision. So there's going to be a lot of families in there. And there's a park down the street, McNamara Park,
Right.
where there's sidewalk in front of McNamara and goes all the way down to the other end of Weiss, but there's no
Right.
sidewalk from,
Nothing.
Yeah.
From there
That's-
to
that-
60.
Yeah, that's a street that I think makes a lot of sense.
Nob Hill
Country
Road.
Club, what's
Nob
that?
Hill Road.
Yeah,
Nob
Nob
Hill
Hill
Road.
Road.
It is a through street from Meriden to
Yep.
the center of Cheshire, and actually 691 and whatever. And there's no sidewalks there at all.
Yeah, and that's a pretty long stretch. That's one maybe we can think about, like I said, some sort of an on-street lane rather than an actual sidewalk.
You're gonna run into dealing with people too. I mean, their front yards, taking front yards, that's gonna be an issue as well. So.
That too, and I think if it's an on-road thing, obviously they're not responsible for clearing it when it snows. So I just think there's some opportunities there. There's Creamery is another one that's that people. There's a lot of people on Creamery that could be getting down to Route 10 where they're kind of putting in a new light, a new pedestrian light, and there's a park there. Wolf Hill Road is another one. Peck Lane. So there's a few through streets for the most part around town that kind of have this where we're lacking a good walking infrastructure.
Comments?
What's that?
Other comments from the commissioners?
Oh.
I don't mean to interrupt you, Joey, but just want to see whether there's an interest on the part of the commissioners to take on your suggested project, is what I'll call it for a better word.
How can we, utilize state grants for these projects? I don't know how the state grants work, Jim, and certainly that would help us town-wise financially, but also the people in town at the same time.
Yeah, there's a couple of grant programs. One called the STEEP grant, I think, which is where we're getting the funding for the Contour project, and I think it also was with the Jarvis Road project was the same thing. These are grant programs that unfortunately they do take a couple years to sort of, you got to apply for them. And then I think there's a few kind of bonding cycles and stuff that tend to go by before whether or not you find out if you were awarded them. So they do take a while. There may be some other grant programs that would enable us to do some of these sort of on-road things I'm talking about that wouldn't necessarily be state funds. It could be other nonprofit organizations or something. But I think we definitely would want to look into those kinds of things when we're proposing a project for sure.
Comments? Other comments? Okay, we'll take a look at it, Jim. Let us follow through with it. We'll see what comes of it. All right.
Okay.
I'm not going to let you off the hook. You got one other item that we'd ask you to take a look at, and that is the refurbishing of our public safety sign on Route 70 by the Public Works Department.
Yep.
Dire need of repainted up top.
Yep. Another conversation I had with George. So he's certainly sympathetic to us fixing the sign. he feels like it needs to be sort of probably taken apart by their carpenter and brought into the shop and really to do the job right. The problem is he's not sure when his carpenter can really do that work. We have one carpenter that really works for Public Works on a full-time basis, and we have about 200,000 square feet of buildings in town that he needs to be a part of servicing on a regular basis. So I think what we probably want to think about doing as a commission is trying to I guess figure out maybe George can help us find out what exactly we need to do to these signs to improve all of them, and then maybe farm that project out to the scouts or someone else that may be willing to help us get the work done sooner rather than later.
The other signs are in pretty good shape. The one that's
Are they?
is that one on Route 70. It's all faded. You can barely read the Cheshire Public Safety Commission. The one on Country Club, the one over by Norton Farms, the one out by the South Fire Station, they're all in pretty good shape.
Okay.
But the one on Route 70, and Steve seemed to mention that during their quote slow time, winter, out of Public Works with the carpenter, that perhaps they could find time to at least.
I don't think right now Public Works has a slow time right now. They've been really busy for the past year or more, and they haven't due to COVID, they didn't take on some seasonal staff and stuff that they normally would, and so Public Works is really stretched thin, and I don't think that we can expect that they're going to have. It sounds like a relatively small thing, but I don't think it necessarily is. So
let me then suggest that maybe I talk to my new favorite company, Connecticut Signcraft in Naugatuck, and see what they would charge to repaint at least. The signs that Donnie changes are all interchangeable. They're in good shape.
Yeah.
The bottom part of the signs are in good shape. It's the top portion of that one sign that is totally faded. You can barely read it. So let me see if I can get a price to how much to do it, and maybe we'll spend some of next year's budget on it.
Okay.
Okay, thanks, Jim.
Sure.
Moving right along, radar speed monitoring, Lieutenant Miller.
They're still in for the winter.
They're stored. Okay. Alrighty. Moving on to page 2. We've already reviewed, I think, the fire department monthly report. But looking at the police department, I'm only going to make 2 comments, and then I'll turn the floor over to the commissioners. 85 or 83 pistol permits in 2 months. You got to be kidding me. 83 pistol permits in 2 months, November and December. That is scary. Number 2, if you read the stolen vehicles, when this is being recorded, right? When we were going to put up the signs as our group, about lock it or take your valuables and that stuff, it was a question of don't be a victim. When you read these reports, car left unlocked with keys in them, car left unlocked with keys in them, car left unlocked with keys in them. Better yet, car left running. I mean, Don, I got to ask this question. How is it that these people, youth, whatever they are, stealing cars, know that the car is sitting there in front of one-stop convenience store for probably, 2 minutes, a minute and a half, 3 minutes, 1 minute, I don't know, that it's gone? Do they follow people to the store? Are they sitting there waiting for somebody to be foolish about it?
They may cruise the area for a while, just waiting for an opportunity. I mean, these are typically crimes of opportunities, so it could happen. They just swing by and notice it.
I mean, how foolish can one be to leave the car running? The lady who was unloading her groceries, I can understand it, maybe, but it's really kind of foolish. I just admonished a friend of mine who lives right off of Route 10, where you can see her garage, leaves the garage door open with the keys in the car. I mean, come on, man. You're just begging to have your car stolen. But I think we've made some inroads with our sign project, I hope. But again, there's nothing we can do about foolishness.
With the pistol permits, is that because perhaps wasn't there a time where people were not able to access getting pistol permits because of COVID, or no?
There was a time when we weren't doing them, so they backed up a little bit. I don't know if maybe Tracy can help me. Is the completed part maybe that we have a few officers on light duty right now helping with that kind of thing right now, or we're getting in process a little bit better?
I think that it initially it was probably a little bit of a backup, but there's still a lot of people coming in and taking applications and asking for applications. So I think it's just very busy.
I just looked at the June report just for the sake of it, 23. You know, that's a pretty good
Yeah.
number of people looking for pistol permits.
Yep.
I mean, is it fair to say it's the reflection of the climate now?
Oh, I would say that a lot has to do with the political climate in Washington, D.C. July was 25. You know, everybody's afraid that the new administration is going to put the kibosh on gun ownership. So I'm sure they can't do it retroactively. And in order for you to legally own a gun, you have to have a pistol permit. So, you know, I think it's a question of the atmosphere in this country right now.
Could have something to do with the concern over the car theft too.
Exactly. Okay. Other comments on the police reports? Oh, Don, let me ask you a question. Is it possible? Is it possible to do a setup for these guys? Here's the problem: you do a setup or whatever you call it, an ambush for these guys, so they steal a car, and you're sitting there waiting for them to steal the car. You arrest them. They're out the next day.
Well, you back it up further with where are you going to set up, because they're happening everywhere. And then the next question is, you've got two kids in a car. Are you chasing them or not? Which the answer is more often than not no. So it's a tough situation.
Well, I just hope that the public. I would like to propose to the commission, when the weather improves, that we do another campaign to get people to be aware of the fact that cars are being stolen, and in most cases the keys are in the car, or in most cases the car is left running. So anyway, all right, projects for the future. I think we've outlined two of them. One of them being this trail projects, is the trail safety program with Southington and Plainville. The sidewalk project, which is of interest to the commission. Don, you want to go over the overall staff changes? There have been a bunch of them, including the promotion of our detective sergeant to lieutenant. Again, congratulations.
Thank you. First off, we have two new hires. Oscar Rivera and Tim Costelli just began the post academy last week, I think. Officer Josh McClellan was promoted to sergeant on December 6th. He's assigned to midnights in patrol. Sergeant Brian Schechter was assigned to the support services division as the detective sergeant. He took over my post. And the lieutenants all kind of moved around. Lieutenant Sutherland is now assigned as the admin lieutenant. Lieutenant Durkee is assigned to support services, and I'm assigned to patrol.
Well, I'd like to have the record trace show congratulations to Officer McClellan on his promotion. I think we covered Don's promotion last meeting. Brian Schechter, I would consider that a lateral change, but I guess we should congratulate him on taking over for Don and the detective sergeant. And then, of course, the shuffling of our lieutenants around the various assignments. Okay, I will point out my last item, that when I took over as chair of this commission, I did take the liberty of calling Chief Dreif, who called me back almost immediately. And I, just as I did with Jack Kasner, I said that we would like to be more active in terms of supporting the police department in any way, shape, or form within reason, that he would like to see us support the police department. He and Jack are pretty much independent, but I think there are certain areas like the signs and whatever that we can try to help him. And in fact, in the article that appeared in the Record Journal, it mentioned the signs before they talked to the chief. So I'd like to see more of that type of relationship between the fire department and the police department. Donna, your last question, unless we have other business. Officer Gonzalez attended unbreakable cop training. What the hell is that?
I think it was a kind of having ways to deal with certain things that are going on now in policing, attitudes, issues you may run into, employee assistance type stuff.
Okay. All righty. Well, thank you. Is there anything else from anybody? Greg, let's go around. Lauren, anybody? Joe? Jim?
I'm good.
Thank you all very, very much. I hope you have a wonderful evening and a very nice, happy weekend. Our next meeting, I believe, is February 10th. Is that right? And it'll probably be a Zoom meeting again. But I thank you all. And again, 2 new recruits. Thank you. Welcome.
I would like to make a motion to adjourn.
So moved. All in favor? Aye. Good night, everybody. Thank you very
Good
much.
night. Thanks, guys.
Thank
Nice to meet
you.
Good
Nice to meet
night.
you too.
Bye-bye.